Welcome back to Teaching the Unteachables, where we dive into teaching and learning methodologies for professionals like you. Learn more about John Ellis and the Dynamic Air Consulting on Facebook or on the HVAC Learning Campus at hvaclearningcampus.com. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. This time we're hanging out with John Ellis from Dynamic Air Consulting. John, how you doing today?
Fantastic, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So one of the topics that we talked about, I think is very important for people to understand, is how to turn data into dollars. As we move forward as an industry, we're starting to use analytics a lot more. Data is becoming our friend. And in the past, we've always used data for business management. But what about using data just as a technician, as a contractor, as a business owner? We have resources for looking at data and utilizing that for our own personal growth. So let's dive a little deeper into that and tell us a little bit about your background, your experience in the industry, John.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I've been in this wonderful industry, HVAC and building science now for 43 years. Oh my goodness. I've seen some changes.
Yes, you have.
Yeah. So just to start off, a little background. I owned a contracting business in California.
Mm-hmm.
And what that was is it didn't say it was SoCal Aerodynamics. I was in Southern California, and it didn't say heating and air conditioning. It said performance contracting.
Really?
So early on, I got into that mindset of being able to test, verify, and make informed decisions based on that information.
Nice.
I was an air balance and commissioning agent, commercial and a heavier commercial, up to 50 tons.
Sure.
And so that's collecting data.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also commissioned commercial kitchen hoods. And then I got into doing hospitals and surgery centers, and it just kept growing from there. I was also a HERS rater.
Oh, nice.
And so that allowed me to do third-party testing on residential.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's collecting data.
Yeah.
And so early on, I was a data collector, in one form or
some
another.
form or another. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I also offered, we kind of catered to high-end, high design HVAC, the normal everyday service and installation. And so been a wonderful experience as that. And in that time as a contractor, I got to kind of hone in on a niche market, and that was creating clean, healthy environments for people who were severely respiratory compromised, immunal, and the likes. And so my clients came to me with a wide variety of acute conditions like cystic fibrosis, COPD, immune oncology, lung transplant recipients, Lyme's disease, valley fever. People don't realize that those are Lyme's disease is very respiratory compromising,
impacting
at different stages, and debilitating asthmas all the way down to garden variety seasonal allergies. And so that really helped me take my dive into the indoor air quality journey.
Makes complete sense. Now, when did you start that journey? I mean, it sounds like it wasn't in the last few years or the last decade.
No. That I really got deep into indoor air quality and the building science aspect of what we do, along with the mechanical, I'd say about 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so, founder of what we now are starting to recognize as what residential HVAC should have always been is understanding air. I mean, we're in the business of moving heat, but we're also in the business of treating air. And a lot of people forget about that when we start thinking about residential.
Yeah, and also in the realm of indoor air quality, we're conditioning and treating and cleaning the air, but we are absolutely changing environments in the living spaces. So, so fast forward, I ended up selling my business in California, and I moved, and I kind of retired, and I live in the mountains of New Mexico right now, and then some wonderful opportunities were afforded me, and it's just been such a blessing. So one of the things I get to do is I teach indoor air quality for Dyke and Amanda Goodman under the HVAC Learning Campus. And what a
Absolutely.
great organization. And when they
Yeah.
approached me and they said, John, we want to create a curriculum, I'm absolutely your guy, but I really don't want to stand in front of a classroom and sell products because
Mm,
that's what everybody else is doing. I
right.
said, it really
Absolutely.
needs to be the nuts and bolts and science behind indoor air quality. And so I use a blend of building science, building forensics, and mechanical, and it's been well received. I've taught it all over the United States and Canada, and people are putting to work the information that they get from my classes. So that's been wonderful. I am a business coach and field service trainer for a company called the New Flat Rate. And the
Yeah.
reason it's called New Flat Rate is because traditional flat rate's been good, better, best. We are a full menu pricing system. And
Hmm.
and we are not a pricing company, but we are a software and process development company. And so what that gives me the opportunity to do is go out into the field, work with companies, get into their books, look at where they're profitable, look at each technician at a macro level and say, how are they performing? Are they profitable? And then I get to put on a uniform and get in the trucks and go
Go
run
out.
service calls.
Oh, man,
I
that sounds like a good
absolutely
job.
love that. And I get to go in homes all over the United States and I
Right.
see the whole gamut on how
Yeah.
things are installed. And oh my goodness, yeah, I see some doozies out there.
You see everything from 1 to 10 and anything
Yeah,
in
yes,
between.
yes, sir.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
but in that, myself and the founder Rodney Cope were able to create the very first and only in our industry right now a building science and indoor air quality menu pricing module. And it is fantastic. It was a
Oh,
labor of love. And
sure.
to really spell that out and create menus for that has been wonderful. We've beta tested it, it's out there. People are using it with great success. And so that's been a fantastic experience to be able to do that.
Yeah, I bet.
One last thing, I am a product ambassador for Dust Free.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and in that we have a new product that's launching at AHR next week.
I'll see you there next week.
Yeah, and we are excited. It's hospital grade air filtration for residential.
Really?
All our
Okay.
testing is complete. We're coming at a 0.15 static drop. We're getting 2 to 5 years on a filter change. We're getting 98% filtration. We've got our MERS 16 credentials. Just every, just our data that we've gathered from the lab is fantastic. But we've got some units installed in real world and the expectations were so I used a existing 5-ton system. We put our filtration system on that, and we came at a 0.13 static drop, 98% filtration. Started off at a 0.87 static, and we brought it in when it was all finished at a 0.57.
Now we're getting there.
And that's on an existing system. We only worked on the return air side. We did nothing to the other side,
Really?
and of course we did some cleaning to make sure we were going to get the best results. So that's been very exciting. So
Absolutely. So
that's the elevator version.
yeah, no, absolutely. That's what we're looking for is, let's get into the nuts and bolts of why we do what we do. And for you, it's very much about having that data to be able to drive results. And we talk about this all the time, even with the operation and performance of a system. You cannot make a determination until you have data to do analysis for. And then we make corrections to that data to make improvements on systems. So that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about being able to validate inputs so that we can control favorable outputs.
Absolutely. And just to kind of to make it relatable, we don't, or I hope we don't, as HVAC professionals, arbitrarily just go and put refrigerant in a system.
Right.
We need a set of data points to tell us
Exactly.
whether we need to or not. Maybe we need to take some refrigerant out of a system to
Yeah.
make it, perform
Performance.
to manufacturer specifications. And so we don't arbitrarily start changing components out of a system because they look old. We actually have to take a set of data points, measurements to determine what's the best course of action, or what's the next step in a procedure. And so we can take that concept and expand it all the way out into the home, into the building, into what's in the air. And so that, just to kind of to make it relatable, we
Yeah.
are we are and should be data driven.
Yeah, I agree. We're
Yeah,
going to see a lot of technology in this next few years and next decade that allows technicians and contractors to be able to validate a system and be able to forecast what it could look like. In the past, we've built our models around, all right, let's put some good equipment in here and you should get these results. Well, now we're starting to build enough data that we can look at a system and go, you know what? We can actually forecast the performance of the system and even some filtration and static pressures based on what we have built and learned off from data. So that all that input is really creating much more favorable outputs than we've had to work with in the past.
absolutely. And looking back on my air balance days,
Hmm.
and doing commercial kitchens and different things, I really had to put fan laws to
Back
work.
into play.
And a lot of residential technicians don't understand fan laws because everything's direct drive and things. But
Right.
but what was really interesting is one you have to learn the math behind
Right.
it. But once I did that, I just put it into Excel, so
Yeah.
to make it easier on myself and to streamline the process. But using fan laws, you can put in a certain set of data points and
Hmm.
then hit go, and it'll forecast what your results will be, what your airflow, what your fan watt draw will be, what your amperage, what your RPMs will be. And it's like that is all made possible by gathering data.
Absolutely.
So when we look at home performance, system performance, and even indoor air quality, we want to gather a certain set of data points. And so I've kind of broke those into three categories.
Okay.
And when you're in what I like to call the discovery stage or the investigative stage, we look at those three categories, and the first one would be more geared towards indoor air quality, would be air safety. What's in the air? What are the properties of the air? What pollutants are there? And then once we understand what pollutants and what's in the air, we can understand where they're coming from.
Mm.
And then instead of addressing the symptom, we can now look for the source and go after the source. I call that source control.
Sure.
And that gives us a better understanding on what direction, and that it kind of paves the way on where we should go when we're trying to figure out what a solution or a scope of work would be. And then the second part of that component would be the building safety. What's the building doing? And that's where we bring in our building science discipline. And so we have a certain set of data points that we would like to look at. We run a blower door and we look at ACH 50 and our infiltration. And then we can do a zonal pressuring and moisture mapping and all those things that those data points will tell us. And then the third would be the existing mechanical, because our mechanical systems have the biggest impact on the structure.
Right.
And so I've been using NCI, National Comfort
Hmm.
Institute's testing methodology.
Hmm.
I was been with that organization for, my goodness, 19 years now. So
Wow.
I've been using their methodology for a long time. And
Sure.
with the invention of now Measure Quick and TEC and
TEC and
TrueFlow and
yep.
and all those disciplines, now it just makes collecting that data
Absolutely it does.
real easy for us. Now, sure, it's an investment, but I mean, you've got to have those
Time.
tools. And
Yeah.
and I tell people all the time, hey, you know what? Having a particle scanner or a multi-gas meter or a true flow grid or an airflow hood or a blower door is no different than having a nice, cordless screwdriver, drill.
It's part of it.
It's
Think
a
about the time
tool.
that we waste not using tools. If people say, "Oh, it's going to cost me $1,000 for this," and I go, "What is your time worth? Is it worth $100 an hour? And have you wasted 10 hours trying to come up with numbers that you could have had in minutes?" And they go, "Yeah, yeah, I'm sure I have." I said, "Well, then you already wasted the cost of a tool that you could have been using the entire time."
Sure, and it takes me back to high school when you take algebra or different things.
Yeah.
You could quickly pull up that information on a calculator. but they always wanted you to show the math.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so, because I've been doing this so long, I do know how to take those measurements, you know, with
Manually.
analog and
Right.
do the math and come up with it. But man, just to have technology just give you
Hmm.
that answer. But I do think it's important to understand how
The
and why
fundamental.
that information is
I
coming.
do
So
too.
I try to share that in some of my classes,
Hmm.
kind of the long way to get there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of important. But yeah, technology is a wonderful thing.
Most engineers will tell you you learn how to do something and then you find a way to do it better or faster. You don't
Yeah.
not get the information, you just try to do it in a more efficient way. And as we try to combat this shortage of technicians that we have in an industry, I keep preaching, how do we do this? We use tools to gather the data that we're looking for faster.
Yes, absolutely. So going back, so we've just looked at three categories
Yeah.
for data collection. Whether we're doing a whole home assessment, or we're
Hmm.
just doing an air assessment, or just the existing
A room.
mechanical.
Yeah.
Once we gather that, it's like, okay, now what? Now we got a bunch of data points. Well,
What do we do with it?
one, yeah, you need to be able to discern the data,
Hmm.
analyze the data, and this is where a little experience will come in on telling what's it telling me? What is that data telling me? And so from there, that will allow you to, okay, so I've got high particulates, I've got high carbon dioxide in my home. So that tells me, or high humidity, that tells
Hmm.
me, well, maybe I should bring in some ventilation. Maybe I should add some dehumidification. Maybe I should make sure that my sensible latent ratios on my equipment is in place. Do I have high particulates because I've got high infiltration? Is my filtration up to par to help
Hmm.
combat that? And I always like to say all the filtration in the world is a wash if my infiltration is way too high. And so the data will point us that direction. And once we get there, and then also, I think what's important too is comparing the data to what the client is actually experiencing in the home. Does
Sure.
little Johnny have
Absolutely.
asthma? Does mom have multiple chemical sensitivities? Are we looking to just have an overall, healthy home? Are there infants? Are there older grandparents in the home? Those are all important on helping us make an informed decision for the client using the data.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we've just created a process.
Yeah. So many times we'll get a call from a homeowner. I'm having this scenario. Well, is that a data point or is that an opinion? And so without data points, we don't have a complete reference. We need those data points to be able to validate the opinion. And so it really comes down to understanding exactly what that data is and then be able to communicate with the homeowner. I do hear you. And now we actually have data that we can validate or contradict or be able to negotiate so we can understand what the data is actually telling us. And so it always comes back to quality data to be able to make any type of a true evaluation of a situation.
Sure. And that's an interesting statement that you made, that a client has an opinion, and yes, it's an opinion at that point. But you know what? Our bodies are the best testing
Yeah,
machines that we have.
right.
And when a client is experiencing something, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're experiencing this, and we found that. And now we've just made a connection,
And we can find a solution.
and we can find a solution. It's a wonderful, when you get in that point of the process and all the light bulbs start going off, and we've validated the opinion with data. That's a fantastic thing.
Absolutely. We have so many technicians that will say, I would like to sell this product, but what does it really do? And I go, whoa, wait, you're selling a product and you don't even know what you were treating in the beginning? Let's go backwards and reevaluate. And so this is how you do it. You simply measure, you collect data, and then you create a result based on your findings.
There's a couple phrases I use. One, if you don't test, it's just a guess.
I love
And
that.
the other one I coined from the medical community is prescription without diagnosis. is malpractice. And you hit a key point that's kind of a hot topic, and that is people are selling products without understanding what they're even trying to address. And that's where that prescription, we're prescribing products without a proper diagnosis. And that is malpractice. And that's something I try to drive home in my classes as well. And it's now there are some fantastic products out there, but it's not cookie cutter, one size fits all. So that's a topic for another day.
I love it. Well, John Ellis, thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, you're right. This is a prelude into some other potential topics, but it really does come down to we cannot create dollars unless we're using the data in the process.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
You too.